Okay, then in that case, we can go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:31, and we'll get into roll call.
All right. Director Ahuja.
Hi, here.
Director Bajaj is absent. Director Chow is absent. Director Racy
Present.
and Director Wisłowski.
Present.
Okay, great. We have 3 directors present, 2 absent, so we'll go ahead and move into public comment for items not on the agenda. So Jennifer or Brandon, if you have any comments, now's your time.
I think I made my comment just before all this started about Her Majesty's passing away because I just heard it an hour ago, but that's, all I have for today. It's very sad for me because my parents lived in the United Kingdom for quite a while.
I was saying that this is Jennifer, that in 1983, she visited the Bay Area with Prince Philip, and they actually visited Agilent, which was right there at Stevens Creek and Lawrence and 280. It was an HP facility before. And my brother-in-law actually saw her because he was stopped in traffic. So I always thought that was a lovely memory. And yes, we'll miss her. And I'm also really glad that the heat wave is going away. Take care, everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for your comments. We will go ahead and move on to our consent items. We'll accept a motion to just pass all of them.
I'll make
Motion. Sorry. Go ahead. I'll
Sorry.
second.
Okay, great. So Director Wesolowski has made the motion and Director Ahuja has made the second. So we'll go ahead and move into voting.
All right. Director Ahuja. Director Racy
In favor.
and Director Wisłowski.
approved.
Awesome. The consent items have passed. Moving on to item 4, discussion and action items, starting with 4A for the various financial management actions.
All right. So let me just scroll down here. So just a little bit of background. Currently, Director Wisłowski is signing most of the checks and is also the sole guarantor on the Rancho credit card. Director Wisłowski will unfortunately be retiring this December, which means that there's a bit of a problem as far as check signing moving forward. And so the board has requested that staff put together some proposals on how that burden can be relieved going into the future. So the 3 different pieces of the recommendation are to adopt policy 3000 amendments with a $5,000 per month limit, which I'll go into in a moment. Also adopting a policy 3001 amendment, and of course, opening a Wells Fargo Business Elite credit card and closing the current business credit card with Chase. I actually just realized that with the quorum we have, we may not be able to pass the 3rd one at this meeting because one of our directors may need to abstain from any Wells Fargo related votes. But anyway, I'll go into the rest of it though. So essentially, there's a certain number of checks and a lot of them are routine. And so roughly 95% of those checks can be moved over to staff with these changes. So let's talk about the policy 3000 amendment change. What this does is it allows the general manager to sign off schedule paychecks for hours worked up to a certain dollar amount per month. This would typically be used for payroll adjustments and also for the last paycheck of a part-time employee who's separating from Rancho. So typically that paycheck needs to be ready on the last day or very shortly thereafter. And so this would allow the general manager, me, to be able to sign those checks. And the reason why this is important is because this doesn't happen often at all, but those checks do need to be signed in a hurry. So oftentimes it can be on a weekend or at a strange time. So moving this over to the general manager makes it so that we can take care of that in-house when it does happen. Again, this is very unusual. Also, sometimes payroll errors happen, so we can fix it a little bit faster as well. The policy 3001 amendment, this is where the bulk of checks will be moved away from board signing and onto staff signing. Right now, the policy 3001 is a list of approved vendors that staff can sign, staff being the general manager. And excuse me, I'm actually getting sick again. What? Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So to be on this list, currently the bill has to be a recurring bill, so something that's monthly, quarterly, something of that nature, and there has to be at least one bill every quarter. So annual bills are not allowed, and also bills that would be more irregular would not be allowed. So an example of that would be our landscaper. The regular monthly landscape maintenance bill can be signed by the general manager. However, a sprinkler repair cannot. So
Another would be Roto-Rooter, coming.
Right. So irregular bills that are quite routine have been excluded from 3001. So broadening that and removing those restrictions would allow the general manager to sign those types of checks, but it would only be to vendors that the board has allowed, right? So trusted vendors such as our landscape maintenance folks, and potentially others as well. It could also be Lincoln Aquatics. Lincoln Aquatics is one that we order chlorine from and CO2. And so those shipments can be on different intervals. So that would also, again, remove that check signing from the board. Now, all of those transactions would still be visible in the board meeting with the transaction list that is in the consent calendar. So none of it would be hidden in any way, shape, or form, but they would still be reviewed. The final change would, of course, be to close that Chase credit card account, which Director Weslowski is the guarantor for. Initially, we had understood that there would need to be a new guarantor, but it turns out that for this particular card, and for our type of entity, we actually only need to assign a administrator access designation, which is very helpful. And this would allow, if this administrator access designation is given to the general manager, to me, then that would allow me to do things like retrieve statements, dispute charges, and speak to bank representatives. This is very similar to the key executive issue with the regular account. So having a staff member as the administrator access designation really helps with operations, because then if we need to pull a statement for whatever reason or dispute a charge, we don't have to call Director Weslowski to do that for us and wait on hold. So this is one of the ways that we can alleviate some of that check signing burden. Another change that we'd be looking at here is that we'd be discouraging staff members from making the purchases and then seeking reimbursement for it. That way, those charges would go onto the credit card, and the credit card is one of the bills that would be required to have a board member signature to pay off. So that way, there is still that checks and balance. None of those charges would be hidden, or at least not hidden for very long. And other than that, the card itself will have similar limits, and there is an annual fee on this one, but the 2% cash back would, or 1.5% cash back would actually more than cover that. The only thing that isn't quite settled is there's also another option for points. And the representative at Wells Fargo was saying that many other entities do choose to use points for accounting reasons. So that way, there's not like a strange, where do you count that income type of deal. Is there a question?
Kevin, so my 2 cents instead of points, because points, again, you'll have the same issue where how would you use them? Just go with cash. You can just apply the cash back to the credit card payment itself.
Right. Yeah, it can either be that or it can go straight into the checking account. I would want to check with Joe, our accountant, to make sure and see what would be the most expedient.
Because for, if you get points, what are you going to use the points for? You can't buy chlorine off of points.
Right.
So
I looked into that. What we would actually use it for is the gift cards. So the gift cards, we use those for employee incentives. So particularly new hire bonus will give away, a gift card. So that's, if we did that, that's.
Yeah, if you have something already that you can use that, and then go for it. Yeah.
The big problem is we can't see it unless we sign up for it. So I'm not convinced, but the cashback does seem the most reasonable, and it has the best accounting too, because then you can see it going into the account every month. So let's take a look. This is the policy 3000. This at the bottom, this is the addition here, off schedule payroll to district staff for actual hours worked, not to exceed. And I put 5,000, which is much more than would actually be needed. But at the same time, these policies, we probably won't change them for the next few years. So this would be a number we wouldn't have to touch for a few years if 5,000 is selected. And for policy 3001, again, just striking out the once per quarter and recurring language. I guess legal didn't feel this was necessary, but they added routine in, right? So Roto-Rooter could potentially be routine, but then they would need to be on this list as well. So as you can tell, the list is, fairly established companies. So it's nothing particularly controversial. Is there any questions about these changes?
Again, as I said before, the accountant person is a recurring accountant. You might want to add that to the list, his company. And the only other thing that I can foresee a problem is you may end up paying late fees for the credit card account if you can't get a board member to sign it quickly enough. But again, but you're getting around needing a check to pay by having the ability to directly transfer funds from our checking to the account. But you can't make that payment until you get a board member to approve it, right?
That's correct, yeah. So we could conceivably set up electronic transfers and then have some kind of a paper form that, the board member could sign either on that date or perhaps at a later date saying, yes, I authorized this. I took a look at this packet. I understand these charges have been,
Yeah, because I typically find the credit card bill to be the signing that check takes me about the longest because I look through all the things that are on the credit card to make sure they're justifiable expenses. And more months than not, I have a question for our bookkeeping person, Sunny, to say, what is this charge? So, or of course, maybe other board members won't be paying as much attention as I've been paying.
Thank you for doing that, because that is very important. Make it less time at the very end when the bill is due.
What was that?
If you can send the list of transactions that have already happened, like maybe once a week for the board to review, those can be reviewed in advance. So later when the bill is due, it's not all being reviewed at the same time. So in the final week when the bill is due, it is a much faster review for whoever is going to be approving it. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. I'll just repeat that your mic was a little difficult to hear, but Director Ahuja was saying that we can send the credit card bill ahead of time so that the board can review those items in advance. So that way it's faster.
Okay. Thank you, because I couldn't make out a single word.
Yeah, so these types of things are possible. And in fact, even the transaction list, I do clean it up a little bit so it's a little bit easier to understand. and I do take out the names of individuals on it, but I can send out the raw of both the that list as well as the credit card list if that's helpful.
Yeah, because typically between when the bill is generated and the payment is due, there's at least a couple of weeks.
Yep.
So
The mail's a little bit slower. And so the reason why it takes so long is because the mail comes a little bit slower. It's after the fact, and then Sunny needs to match up all the bills with it. And so she'll be requesting for the receipts, and then that takes a while.
So see, what I was saying was that, yeah, exactly. So, but because you as the general manager will have access online, you can download those statements.
Yes. Yep. Oh yeah. That's true. So I don't have to wait for the post
You don't have
office.
to wait for the actual bill to show up. You can just do it online, download the statement, send it off. And once you're done with your accounting, somebody's already reviewed the list to see what charges they want clarification on. So
That's
it doesn't
good.
take as long. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
No worries.
So you suggest a limit of 5,000 a month for the policy 3,000 amendment. Another point, I agree with you. It's hard to believe that a final paycheck for the last 2 weeks somebody works is going to be more
It
than that.
won't. It
You know,
won't.
other than yourself, it could be, but you wouldn't be signing one for yourself. So, what would they? I was hoping we could pass these at this meeting because I was going to recommend it makes sense to apply for the new credit card from Wells Fargo and have it in hand before you cancel the old credit card. And now we're down to only a couple months. So if we can't vote on this until next month, I'm concerned about the tightness.
I just had two quick questions. So for on the cover page for the agenda, it says not to exceed 4,000 per month for 4A2.
Oh, yes. There was different revisions. My apologies.
Okay.
Either one is fine. Typically, the typical amounts that we might see are anywhere from $30 to maybe $600. And so
Typical amounts for what?
for an adjustment, for a payroll adjustment. So typically when there's an error, it's usually very small, $30, $40, something like that. But then the final paychecks can be a little bit more, maybe $200-300. I've seen up to maybe $600. But it's meant to be future-proof. And I think I was kind of waffling between 4,000 and 5,000 because it is much more than we need, but then we wouldn't need to change it in a while as well.
I mean, I think knowing those numbers, I'm definitely personally more comfortable with passing the 4,000 per month than 5,000. Granted, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge difference, but it's still a difference nonetheless. So I would be in favor of a motion to pass 4A2 and 4A3 and then table 4A1 for a later meeting when we have more directors present.
Steve, were you saying something? Oh, okay.
Well, I was just trying to figure out which ones are 4A2 and 4A1 when I can't see them,
Just all except for the Wells Fargo.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can go ahead and propose that motion then.
Oh, okay. So it'd be 4A1 and 4A3 and have to delay. We have to delay 4A2 because it involves no, it's 4A1 that we have to delay because one of our board members is an employee of Wells Fargo.
Mhm.
That's right.
I'll second the motion to pass 482 and 483.
Okay, great. We'll go ahead and move into voting.
All right, Director Ahuja. Oh, I didn't catch that.
Sorry, approved?
Director Racy
In favor.
and Director Wasowski.
And this is for A2 and A3? Yes.
Yes. Okay.
All right, we have passed 4A2 and 3, and we're going to table 4A1 for a later meeting. That concludes discussion and action items, so we'll go ahead and move on to information and discussion items with the general manager's report.
All right, thank you. So we are again having another CO2 shortage. So the pool is using just acid once again to control the pH. We've been able to do it without any closures so far, but the one worrisome thing is that the total alkalinity is very low. So the alkalinity, what it does is it acts as a buffer so that when you add acid, it doesn't drop the pH too much. So right now, because the alkalinity is low, it's very difficult to control the pH, because as soon as we try to lower it, we dump a little bit of acid in and then it just drops. And so the pool water gets very acidic. So we're managing it with other chemicals that increase the alkalinity. But again, there's going to be increased cost. There's a lot of personnel time required in just kind of managing that up and down. And the flip side of the alkalinity issue is that means that when we pump the chlorine in, the pH goes up really quick too. So that's overall, it's not a good situation, but we're managing it as best we can. As far as our projects, again, the board orientation, we have one member who has not completed training. There is going to be a walkthrough with the Dewberry architects to start getting some of that work started for the site master planning, and also to get some of the stopgap measures that we're going to do to use that grant money. So that's coming up very soon. As far as the facility management and digital payments, we're zooming in on which software platform to recommend. I'll be reaching out to county council to start looking over the contracts and to be able to recommend one with a final contract for the board to review and adopt at next month's meeting. Assuming that happens, that means we'll start implementation the month after, which would be November. So that's very exciting. And of course, for our fall operations, we've started our fall swim lessons, and we're still doing public swim. One very nice thing that's starting is our hall rentals. We stopped our hall rentals in 2020 due to the pandemic, so it's the first time we've been opening them back up again. And so far, we've had an all-day music recital concert. And actually, I think we've had 2 of them. So that's a very exciting thing. But it's been complicated by the staff shortage. You know, it's not just the swim instructors. Our office staff has also been very impacted. And so there's been a few days where Sunny, Jay, or myself is the supervisor on staff for the hall rentals. So, but we're managing so far.
Question.
And yes.
Explorer Recreation, Perfect Mind. Have the lawyers been happier with, accepted it? I remember there was an issue several months ago because it was a Canadian company.
Yeah, so what they had said was that it's not a hard no, but there are some hurdles to go through because it's a Canadian company. Mostly because the data could be stored in a different country, and the way that that's stored may be under a different law from American law. The Explore Recreation was willing to have the contract be guided by American law, but then again, if the data centers are run by a third party, then that's maybe not American law. So there's definitely some headwinds as far as Explore Recreation. Civic Rec is the alternative, the American alternative. It is slightly more expensive. However, you know, they're relatively similar. There's some nuances. I think Civic Rec is probably a little bit better as well, but it just costs a little bit more as well.
All right.
Kevin, for the data storage, most companies use cloud now. So you might want to find out the rules with the lawyers around that, because very few companies actually use physical data centers now.
Mhm.
And so if it's on the cloud, it's on the cloud. It shouldn't matter where it is, because there's no location.
Oh,
I
there's a location. You know,
that would be nice.
Yeah, but it's confidential location, so no data center will declare where they are. So it's still considered cloud. So it's usually Google Cloud or AWS. So if just find out which data center they're using. And if we are at the phase where you're talking about contracts, they should declare that to you.
Mhm. I am going based on memory from last year. So that was when we were starting this project.
Yeah.
But it was an issue. So, and it was one that we will need to work through,
Okay.
as well as security clearances and all kinds of other stuff the county wants to look into.
Does it look likely that we're going to be able to pass the stuff at the next meeting, that what's his name will be able to make the next meeting, I hope?
I believe so.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I say, I'm concerned that we cut it kind of close.
Mhm. Yeah, it is a little bit closer than I'd like. If he doesn't, if he isn't able to make it, we could potentially postpone the regular meeting and call a special meeting when he is available. For next meeting, let me just see what we have on the books. I think there's, I'm just going to take a look here. I know that there's going to be another professional services agreement, this time with the the other architects, the ones who would actually be doing the design portion. So that one's going to be on the agenda. And let me see what else here.
I hope it's not 25 pages again.
It's actually pretty similar to the last one. The main difference between the two contracts is that there's a section with the pricing for certain types of work. That is a little bit different just because they have different subcontractors under them. But otherwise, it's almost the same wording. So I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Well, we only had 24 hours to read this stuff as it was. So this for various reasons. I'm sorry if I sound cranky. You know, it's still 90 degrees in here, so I don't have AC. So
Hot. Okay, September, October. We may have some contracts for the stopgap measures that are identified by Dewberry Architects at the meeting. So that may also be, there may be a bunch of contracts on there. Then there's going to be the contract for the vendor adoption for either Explore Recreation or Civic Rec. So it looks like there's next meeting's going to be a difficult one.
yes. Well, let's just hope it's only 80 degrees.
One can only hope.
And you can get them out earlier because you don't have a power failure too.
That's true. My power went out all day on the hottest day of the year for like 8 hours.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Okay. We'll vote by silence. So regular silence. That is a no.
Yes.
Cool. So we'll go ahead and adjourn at 7 p.m. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your evening.